Hi, everyone. All right, we are live. Welcome to Seller Hotline. Go ahead and start putting your questions in the comments. It's good for us to kind of get a backlog of them going. So feel free to go ahead and start typing those out, and we'll try to get to as many as we can today. And today we've got John from Rainmkr. John, welcome. So excited to have you.
I'm excited. We had a great chat last time. Now we get to answer some live questions. So looking forward to that.
Definitely. Well, tell us a little bit more about your background, John, and what you've got going on right now.
I'll try not to make it too sprawling because it's definitely not a straight path, right? So kind of like to the start. So I actually started my journey in digital marketing. And I'm actually here today because we're dear friends at Rainmkr, right? And so I was the director of digital marketing at Rainmkr. I think I started there about 2009. And those are some wild, fun days there. And we're actually dear friends to this day. We've been friends since kids, and I've since went my own way, but now I have an office in the building that I work out of. And we got to work with just lots of really cool top tier athletes over the years, like Marshawn Lynch. Another cool thing we did was we worked with Steph Curry with an Under Armour on a cool campaign, and lots of other across lots of different sports over the years. So definitely some fond memories there. And I basically ran all things digital marketing internally. We had the Google agency, Facebook agency. We had somebody running our Amazon, all of that stuff. And then about 2015, we brought our Amazon in internally because I noticed the channel just seemed like it was underperforming. It was mismanaged, and we could just do it better here. Within a short period of time, at this point in time, the D2C was like 70% of the business, right? And it had been historically. But within the first 12 months of us running it internally, it became 70% of the business. And what I realized is that our media mix, we weren't doing anything special on media mix and front funnel or anything like that. It was a tectonic shift in e-commerce, purchase behavior. And so, we naturally doubled down and made it a significant focus point. And then kind of like segueing away from there, Casey's a serial entrepreneur who founded Rainmkr. He's since exited and he's doing other things now. He's not getting too far down that road, but he had other friends that were in the space. And so I started consulting on the side with them with their Amazon stuff. And then that consulting income became more than my full-time income. So I made the leap into starting my Amazon marketing agency, did that for a while, loved it. Amazon, remember, everybody knows Amazon aggregation, Thrasio, that stuff. This is kind of like peak COVID boom. And I thought that Amazon aggregation was the future. And I still think that it is. And I had a tremendous opportunity where I was brought in as one of the first members for an Amazon aggregator for Intrinsic, and it was a health and wellness. It's health and wellness roll up. What I didn't know was the capital markets were going to dry up, and so it's pretty hard to buy brands without a blank check, right? And so some of the smartest people I've ever been around, just fantastic human beings. It wasn't a function of the team; it was a function of the market, and I'm still dear friends with them today. So. Fast forward today, that's since been acquired, and now I'm back out into the wild again, and that's actually where I prefer to be anyhow. So that's kind of my eclectic story.
That's an amazing story, and you've had a chance to be involved in so many different aspects of Amazon. I mean, you've got the agency side, obviously now, right? You've got the aggregator side, and then you've got kind of working for a company internally. So you've seen so many different angles of how to interact with Amazon. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been fun and hectic at times. I know we curse Amazon lots of times a day, but if I'm honest about it, it's I wouldn't have it any other way. It's a love for sure, as everybody I'm sure shares those sentiments.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of a necessary evil, I think. I mean, it pays the bills for all of us, so we can't anger the Amazon gods too much.
Indeed.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got a few questions trickling in, so we can get started. First question here. During seasonal spikes, so I mean, we're in Q4, so definitely probably going to have a lot of Q4 questions. During seasonal spikes, my ads burn through spend really early in the day, and then I miss those later in the day shoppers. What would you recommend in this situation to control that pacing without hurting performance too much?
I think Carly and I are going to have very similar points of view here, and I'm not going to steal her thunder here, but they have like a day parting tool that actually deals with this. That will be one part. I'll let Carly deal with that. I'm going to talk a little bit about seasonality in general. especially when we look at like prime events, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I think unfortunately those types of events bring apart bid auction stupidity, right? And so the days moving into those, everybody overspends because they think they have to, and it just blows everything up for everybody. And so managing budget is really, really important, clearly. And how do I want to word this? So I think it gets easy to fall into the trap to try to spend to keep up with everybody else. And I found it always works best to just kind of ride the wave and work for efficiency and let the extra traffic work for you, right? And so day parting is very, very clearly an option. I think that's probably going to be the best way to handle that, because you're going to need to figure out what parts of the day, that you sell best. And, looking at historical data and things like that are going to be good barometers, indicators for you. But and the other thing too, it's depending on what part of peak you cap out at. I think a lot of people, this might be kind of a taboo thing to mention, but like sometimes it's okay to cap out on budget. Sometimes I think it's okay, because you'll just end up blowing your brains out for the rest of the day, especially on those events. So when I'm doing those types of events, long story short, I really do just look for efficiency. And you're not going to spend your way through the mix to get more eyeballs on those days. And even if you did, it's going to cost you a lot more money than it's worth, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I think that it's more important to have like a solid foundation leading up to those days so that you can just kind of sit back and let things run efficiently. And if you are blowing through budget early in the day, I mean, if you don't have the budget, like you're going to just have to if you don't have the cash flow, then you have to just let those budgets run out. And that kind of is what it is. And the rest of your sales you're going to get organically, and that's not a super bad thing. And yeah, so I would say avoid chasing that bid, that temptation to just raise bids up to try to compete. Like even Amazon, they have in their suggested bids like suggested bids on normal days and suggested bids on holiday days, and just ignore that. Don't listen to that, and you're likely still going to be competitive in the auction, because you always got to remember it's not only your bid that's kind of a factor in how your ads or when your ads are displaying, right? Amazon's also looking at other things like your sales volume history, even your inventory levels. All of those different kinds of things can factor into whether or not your ad gets displayed, right? It's not only the bid. So yeah, I agree with you, John. I think that people get a little bit like they get FOMO and feel like they have to compete, or have to spend like crazy, but the traffic's going to be there regardless, and your job is really just to capture it as efficiently as possible.
I want to add one more thing there too that occurred as part of our strategy is that, again, there might be other experts that don't necessarily agree with this, but I tend to, what's the moneymaker? Sponsored products. Let's be honest. I mean, there's a reason. It's not an arbitrary reason that it's like 70 or 80% of people's media spend mix on Amazon. And so on those days, your sponsored brands placements are going to be astronomical. It's going to be tough to get any kind of impression volume to drive anything meaningful. You're going to pay huge click prices. So a lot of times on those days, I'll pull back on display. I'll pull back on sponsored brands, and then use that budget to funnel into your high profit, not high profit, but high sales volume, high efficiency sponsored products campaigns. That's really been pretty effective, I would say. And then defensive PAT, if you have any of that stuff going, like cross-selling, like, I'm going after new customers on those days. So you can usually move that budget around into those areas, and that might give you, a couple, 2-3 extra hours of burn rate that you wouldn't normally get.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart approach, and kind of goes with that overall strategy of keep things efficient, keep things, reasonable. Otherwise, the other thing you have to consider is you blow all the profit that you would make, on your ad spend. Or I also see people running like crazy discounts during these holidays because they sort of think that they should, or because they see their competitors doing it, and not realizing that, yeah, you sold a bunch of units, you got a lot of revenue, but you barely broke even. That's not really always the goal. I mean, sometimes you can, those that can benefit you, kind of kickstarting that flywheel of rank, after it, because you've got those big sales volume numbers. But yeah, it's a balance for sure.
100%.
All right. So next question here. What's the best way to tell the difference between normal Q4 fluctuations and an actual performance issue? So I think what this person is asking about, like, at least for me, like there can be pretty big peaks and valleys during Q4. And sometimes I think I will get clients like panicking, like, why are we down so much? Like, I don't know, the day before Black Friday or, like on Christmas Day and stuff like that. And it's like, well, nobody's shopping on Christmas Day because, hello, they're busy with their families, whatever. So yeah, when should we be looking during Q4? Like, how can we tell the difference between normal fluctuations versus like a real performance issue to look into?
I think, Carl, we probably answered this a lot over the years, and I believe me, we understand your your anxiety intimately. So, a couple of things there. The first thing that I found that you want to probably take a look at is what type of product you're selling, right? So you have to keep in mind that giftable items are going to be the hot commodities, around Christmas time, right? I think sometimes for first year sellers that haven't been through that first holiday cycle, if they're selling something that's not necessarily giftable, you get to hear all this buzz all over the Facebook groups or whatever that's and then everybody's having all these explosive sales. And you're like, what's wrong? Is my listing broke? What's going wrong? And then you just have to take an honest look, at your calendar. I would say, protein isn't going to be an explosive seller around peak Q4. I could be wrong. It probably sells a little bit more than it's supposed to, but you're not seeing some of those explosive numbers. So that's the first consideration. I would say the second consideration is understanding the holiday shipping windows, right? So, as you get closer to, Amazon's gotten better about this with first and second day shipping. So that window is actually extended, but as you get to, probably 5 days out, I would say 5 days out from like Christmas Eve, that's when you really start to see that drop off. And that is typical. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the way things are. And clearly coming into those sales events like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, people are going to wait. Like, even though they have these teaser deals and stuff like that, that's stuff to factor in. So my unfortunate recommendations in these situations is A, look at your catalog, and B, take a deep breath and see it is what it is. So
yeah, man, you do have to kind of have realistic expectations. I think, like you said, when people are seeing other people's results and keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, you can kind of set yourself up for disappointment if your product, like you said, is not really matching with the whatever season, whatever holiday it is. Then you just kind of have to take what you can get and maximize what you have. And then of course also looking at your own historical data, if you have it, right, like you should really only be comparing yourself to yourself, I think. I mean, seeing what competitors are doing, very important, of course, and you want to you want to have touch on what your competitors are doing. But at the end of the day, like you should only really be comparing yourself to yourself in terms of what your expectations are during those different holidays, I think.
Well said. Run your own race. Keeps you sane.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's see, got a little bit of a slowdown with questions. Okay, what are your thoughts on going after gifting related keywords during Q4? Like big, broad, like gifts for him, gifts for her. Like, those are very tempting to go after. Should people go after those?
Oh, I think we both probably tested this a lot over the years.
Yeah.
So, like, ultimately, what I've learned is that I think I really, really like broad match modifiers, right? And so I think a first, like a kind of a best practices that's actually worked, from my standpoint, is like you have, like core search phrases that are important to your account on certain SKUs. And a lot of times you can chain those together with modifiers. So I don't know, like, Christmas gift, yoga mat, something like that. If you're selling a yoga mat. So that's one way to kind of scrape into those deeper pockets of search without overspending. But typically, it's really hard to win on those really deep, like high search terms like that, because the pay to play players are really going to win there. And the long time players, the market titans that can pay Amazon for prime placement on the homepage and stuff like that. So it's really tough. You got to try to scrape around the edges would probably be my best recommendation there. What you could do, again, using modifiers with like keyword seed roots and things like that, like gifts and Christmas and stuff like that. Very, very low bid, right? So in the cents range. And I will go up and down on those, but I'll do that at like an 8-cent bid or something like that, knowing it's going to, so you can kind of scrape around the boundaries there. But, typically it's really tough to win in those spots. So my advice would be, I feel like your resources will be better used spending more where you're getting leverage, as opposed to trying to go out into those front funnel terms and try to win there if you're like a small, medium-sized player.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I actually did a presentation or a webinar on this week. And if you go and look at the search, like if you go look at gifts for him, even Amazon doesn't really know what to display there, because it's so like, gift for who, who is him, and like, what is he like? And so you'll get a huge variety of things, from like shaving kits to jewelry to like even like lederhosen was on there when I was looking. Like it's all kinds of stuff. And I think people who are looking at those like really broad search terms, they don't know what they want yet. They're just trying to get an idea of like, what are some gift ideas, rather than like, okay, now I know that, I know that my husband would really love some new lederhosen, and now I'm gonna go look for those lederhosen. That's where you want to be. So I totally agree with something like modifiers. Like if your product, like if you have a yoga mat, like gifts for yoga lover or something like that, that's more bottom of funnel, that's more relevant to your product, is really going to be the best way to compete. Unless you, like you said, you are one of those pay to play, like kind of big players, and you do have the budget for that, or your product is really specifically a gifting kind of product. And that could be a good spot for you. But like with one of our own brands that we sell, it's like gag gifts and pranks. And so it's super fun. And, but it does really well during Q4 because everybody has like white elephant parties or office parties. And so they want to be like the funniest person in the room. Right. So, but I looked at the data, and so gag gift really, kind of broad term. And we barely get any sales on that. Like most of our sales come from a more specific description of what the product is, rather than like that broad generic kind of gag gift term. So yeah, so that's what I'd recommend for keywords.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, gag gifts. I think that's probably one of the few situations that has more of a right to win than other products, because it literally is just a gift. So it really is that is the search interest. So it's kind of fun to say that same playbook is staying in your lake, but your lake just happens to be gifts. So I think that's a good call out.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So if you're already ranked really well organically, when or how do you decide whether to keep running ads or scale them back? Like, I guess at what point do you start pulling back and reducing spend on ads when you start to rank better organically?
The age-old question.
The age-old question. Yes, indeed.
This is actually really cool, and I'm probably going to butcher this because this is all like beta, like mad scientist stuff. And I was chatting with Kari before the call about how we're building our proprietary dashboards and stuff like that around, KPIs. This being one of them, and I ended up doing an exercise. As a quick aside, is that we had a new brand launch. It's super fun in the sexual wellness space. Super cool. Like I think they're going to do really well long term. And they came out of the gate like a 4.8, 4.9 rating, and we ended up falling like a 4.5, 4.4, and so the panic came in and conversion rate dropped, whatever. And so I did this. The idea of the analysis was I was really digging deep into, how much how much reviews matter by niche and rating and where the fall off points were.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pulled in a couple of other variables as well. Like I wanted to look at that. I wanted to look at price, median, AOV. And then I also wanted to look at page rank. And how I defined page rank was positions 1 through 5, regardless of if they're organic or paid, right? And so when I put that into ChatGPT, and I said I piled in just a ton of data, and I said, which one of these things in terms of correlation dictates, market dominance, market share, sales velocity, and stuff like that. Page rank was almost off the chart in terms of how much it matters, significantly more than ratings and reviews. Like it was a really, really insightful learning. And the other wild thing about it is that it didn't matter if it was organic or paid. It's purely a function of page rank, right? And so I got to thinking about that a little bit further, and you guys will see where we're going with this in a second. It's that you're not always going to show up organically on a search every time, depending on where you're at in the United States or what's in stock in the FBA network and stuff like that. So there's going to be there's going to be times you're going to get double impressions on your core keywords, right? And there's going to be times that you're not. But vacating those positions 1 through 5 to save money is a really, really big gamble. Now, within reason, right? I mean, if you're burning cash on branded keywords or something like that, or it's a really, really important keyword to your account, and it's just costing you a lot of money to do that, you need to play that balancing guessing game. But it ultimately boils down to certain, order velocity, where you're at relative to other sellers on the page. And you can roll the dice. Like my friend Hazifa, he's probably more on the conservative side than I am. I like to err on the side of caution and kind of play on that end of it. He's more on the conservative side. And I think, his way of looking at it is that you watch that order velocity very closely, right? And as you start, let's say it's 50 units a day. If you start to, on that keyword, you start to drop to like 41 and 39, and you ride that down, right? You're probably going to use rank. This is another important consideration. This is kind of like a caveat that just not like an anecdotal observation. I probably need to case study this deeper, but just from raw experience. If you historically win a top of search placement, a really good advertising placement in a competitive space, and you've been there for a long time and you vacate, right? For a period of time, like if it's not just a few days, let's say it's 2 weeks, typically it's very difficult to get back in there because Amazon sees that there's a new listing that's now converting there, and it knows that real estate's prime real estate because it's making money on the order. Amazon's making money on the order and making on the clicks. And so they make damn sure that only those listings stay there so they can make money on both spots. So if you pull out from there too, you have to keep in mind that sometimes you might not get that spot back, or you're going to have to pay through the nose to get back there at a higher CPC for a very, very long period of time. So I don't think it's black and white. I think it's shades of gray there. Start to scale back your paid presence on those keywords. Don't completely, pull out the plug and see what happens, because unfortunately, like in this particular case with the sexual wellness part, this actually tethers into this really, really well. So in this particular category, you couldn't advertise on sponsored products, which sucks because some of the products had review modes of thousands of reviews, have been sitting there forever. You could still advertise those. So you could show up on like sex toys and stuff like that. So I'm scraping around trying to find certain ones. But I built out all these long sprawling campaigns because I knew risk was low because it's not going to spend. I'm like, we just got to cast a wide net, see what happens.
Yeah.
By some stroke of luck, this was around July Prime Day, Amazon they unlocked sponsored products, and the account went completely nuclear, like a complete
Interesting.
And it was like, yes. I'm like, you guys don't understand how kind of a stroke of luck this is.
Yeah.
Nobody had caught on at that point, right? Like they're going to catch on. So we had like a 4 or 5 week head start. Unfortunately, we stocked out. There was a danger of stocking out. So I had to pull back on ads. And as sure as like some of these bigger players started moving into those spots, the ones that pretty much that deserve to be there to begin with,
Yeah.
it's been nearly impossible to recapture those positions. So that's my long-winded answer to that age-old question.
No, and it is,
Yeah.
I think it is so hard. I think there's a lot of qualitative and quantitative kind of going on. And like even in each niche, it feels like the answer to this can be really different. But I think you touched on a lot of really good points. And that's really fascinating what you shared about, kind of comparing rank versus ratings and reviews and that kind of thing. I mean, I think my take on that is just people will just click on the first thing they see. Like people are just lazy and they just click on the first thing. So being first is that important, so that's really interesting. And then what you're saying about I mean, I totally agree. Never just like completely pull the plug, don't do that. Like that's going to be really tough to come back from. And you would, if you're going to pull back, to do so incrementally. Absolutely. I would also add there that you can experiment with just pulling back on top of search placements and focusing more on rest of search and product pages, right? That's something that we'll do if we notice that the organic result is showing up right next to the paid result. Like if you're number one organic and then your paid results right there, you can often kind of cannibalize that organic sale because people don't differentiate. They just click kind of indiscriminately. So so you could pull back on just top of search and move your multipliers to the other placements. That's another option as well, at least to consider. But then I think you're totally right that if once you're sort of dethroned, it's very difficult to get that spot back and to get that rank back up. It's similar to like when you go out of stock and you have to try to rank back up. There's like a period of weeks and potentially months, and sometimes you never get back to where you were before when you go out of stock. So I don't know what Amazon is doing. Like it's a little bit of a black box as far as what their actual calculations are, and in determining who's ranking. But yeah, I've observed, similar kind of struggles re-ranking. So I know it probably sounds like we're just saying keep spending, but it's for a good reason,
I wish that wasn't the answer.
Yeah.
I wish that wasn't the answer. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of factors. Like I wish you can't just like pay to rank. Like I wish it worked like that, but it's not exactly the case. But once you do rank, you do want to be careful about pulling back too much, especially on your kind of core keywords if you can.
I love the idea of shifting placements. That's a great tip. Great tip for everybody.
Absolutely. If you, because sometimes you're kind of hitting them twice, right? Like you're already showing up at the top of search and then they keep scrolling and there you are again. And maybe they notice you the second time or whatever, right? It's just kind of more touch points. Okay. Next question. My PPC results look great, but my profit margins are shrinking because of FBA fees and all kinds of Amazon fees. How would you adjust for that? PPC results are looking great, but profits are not looking great. What do you suggest?
This is going to be a problem for a lot of people. You got that tariff stuff that everybody's trying to work their way through. Amazon's not forgiving with fees, and they're probably not going to get more forgiving through the future, right? So it's kind of the nature of the beast. And so it sounds to me like the first thing you're going to want to suss out is if there's literally, you got to go through your payment report, right? And you got to figure out fee changes, stuff like that. So see if there's something structurally wrong. If that's not the case, me and Carly had a really good chat on this thing about this very thing. And she had one of her kind of, you're inspiring my talking point here, Carly. One of her hot takes on like kind of counterculture, like PPC things was defensive PAT. So targeting your own listings. And one thing that I've noticed over the years on, I would say, on accounts that are doing well, and even sometimes on some accounts that aren't doing well, like ironically enough, we have an automotive client. I told Carly the story. We're like, what you can have happen is, depending on how the account's set up, is that you can create the account in such a way that it looks very good for your agency to report. Right? Because my ACoS is really, really low, and I have all these really low ACoS campaigns, and ultimately what you'll end up finding in those situations, if things are good structurally, is that you're overspending on branded. Probably, I would take a look at that. And you're probably overspending on targeting your own listings. You're driving a lot of paid revenue, and it looks great in the dashboards. Sponsored display, you'll find an inordinate amount of spend allocation in those areas, right? And when you find high, if it's as high, I would say if it's 40% of your spend in those areas and the A cost is really low, you're probably wasting like a good chunk of money. Yeah. And to me, the litmus test of that is my spend should be moving my top line.
Yes.
Right. That's the correlate, right? And so if I'm driving my paid sales through the moon and my top line's not growing and my bank account shrinking, that's probably an indicator that I'm targeting myself to make the account look good. That would be my guess. But
yeah, 100%. You know, if it looks good, you want to make sure that it actually is good. And
right.
like you said, monitoring that top line, super important. And what we find happens all the time is once we pull back on that branded, top line doesn't actually move. It just shifts over into the organic column instead of the paid column, which is really what you want anyway.
Right.
So yeah, definitely look into your account. Are you doing a lot of branded? Are you doing a lot of branded that you don't even know about? Sometimes we audit accounts and we go and look in there in the search term reports, and a lot of things are coming from their auto campaigns or category targeting campaigns, and they end up they've been targeting themselves and they didn't even really know it, right? So being a little bit careful there. If you want to get really diligent about this, you can even negate your own brand name in your campaigns, and we actually do that for for a lot of our clients. So you can like do everything to make sure you're not doing that. Another thing I would say here, you know, when it comes to profit margins and advertising, advertising is really only one part of your P&L, right? So looking at the rest of what not only Amazon's fees, but where can you maybe get better deals with your vendors? Where can you get better COGS? You know, what are your shipping rates? Things like that. Where else can you make back some of that margin potentially? And if you can't, then there's other fundamental questions that you need to kind of be answering. And there are fixes for that. Like you could do multi-packs, right? You could start selling 2-packs, 3-packs, whatever of your product, if that makes sense, and get your margins up and give yourself more room there. But yeah, and remembering also advertising should be an investment and not necessarily treated as just an expense in your business, right? So yeah, that's what I'd say there.
Yeah, 100%. I think COVID, that we've had a block of about 5 years that just is atypical, right? Because even before that, like I remember it being really, really hard, and then it got really, really easy. But I remember the hard prior to COVID. And I think, and this would be like, as much as we want to think we can Amazon Ninja our way to like millions or whatever your goals are for your account, like the nuts and bolts and the structural parts of your business, that's what's going to dictate the longevity of the business. Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the big brands like Procter & Gamble, all these, like they didn't ninja their way to where they're at. It was sound, boring business practices like optimization, like cars looking at. And I know we don't want to look in those places, but if you're going to survive, you have to look in those places and you have to get good in those places. And I think the silver lining there is that the lion's share of people aren't going to do that work because it's hard, which does create a competitive advantage if you want to dig in there, you know, dig your heels in the dirt when it gets hard and continue to survive and thrive as things go along. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always shocked. There's so many accounts that we audit, and it turns out that they're actually losing money on every single sale, you know, like even before running ads. And it's just like, okay, we need to have a different conversation here. And honestly, that shouldn't be coming from your advertising agency. Like that's not when you want to be having that conversation. So yeah, getting the foundation right, always important.
100%.
Okay, great. Next question. My product keeps losing the buy box, even though my price is competitive. What factors do you usually check first when you're having buy box problems?
I probably have some follow-up questions here. This is tough to just answer off the cuff. So the very first thing I would take a look at is that there are, depending on the brand, like we have an account, it's a super cool business model. They do like tremendously well. They make merch for creators, and they have a large share of the catalog is China direct to Amazon, right? So large, it's just the catalog is so big, like it would be very difficult for them to stock everything FBA. And so a lot of times in those situations, even if you have a blend of FBA and FBM, if your ODR is bad, so if your on-time delivery rate is bad, you hit a threshold, you get the warnings from Amazon. This may not be the case in your case, but even if it's not, they'll throttle buy box, right? So if your ODR is bad across the catalog, they'll typically you can lose the buy box everywhere. So that would be the first consideration. The second consideration would be, well, there's a couple different things. Check for resellers, right? I know Carly talked about stuff just like struggle. Like if it always seems like a good idea when you first launch let's say like you invent a product, right? And you want to sell to everybody, right? And so you sell to everybody, and then they sell on Amazon on your listing, and then you end up realizing that you could capture all of that sale yourself, and now they're capturing the sales and you're selling it to them for less. So definitely look there. Because a lot of times if you sell to people, even if they're not selling on Amazon, they'll resell to somebody else who's selling on Amazon. So you really, I would say, always keep a really tight pulse on who you sell to, because inventory leakage can come back to haunt you on your list. The other thing would be along those same lines is that if your product is showing up in other channels that you might not, you could have a reseller that you're not aware of, and it might not even be your product. Like people counterfeit your product, and they'll sell on Walmart or Target, these other places for less. And as soon as the Amazon's crawlers notice that, you can lose the buy box. And so you really got to be vigilant to the other places, and you really got to be vigilant of your stream of inventory, that people are buying it in bulk, because you could really create some long-term problems for yourself if that's the case.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think a lot of people don't realize the off Amazon, that Amazon is scraping those other websites, especially like eBay. eBay's a really big one. I think that people get kind of burnt on. So yeah, one thing you can look out for too is if you notice that you had a really unusually large order, like units wise, all in one order, that person might be gearing up to resell your product somewhere. So yeah, just being aware, I guess, of that. And if you do have a hijacker, taking those steps to send out the cease and desist or whatever it is that you need to do to get them off the buy box. So yeah, it's not only price, right? Price isn't the only thing that's determining the winner of the buy box.
And one thing you can do, you can clone the listing as like not 100% recommended. Again, this is like if you're in a really bad spot. Let's say it's a color variant. You can use it. You can set up the option set as color. So you can set up another child ASIN as like onyx instead of black, right? Under the same parent. And you're still going to get the review sharing across ASINs. A lot of times, people, you can send your ads and your traffic to that listing instead and still win the buy box. Like that's kind of a way around that. And I think the other caveat here, which is good to talk about, we're talking about buy box, how crucial is, and we all know how crucial is if you've been in Amazon for any kind of period of time, is that the real killer to not having the buy box is you can't advertise the listing. Like that's a killer. That's a killer. So I feel your pain there, and we hope that helps you out and you can get that squared away.
Yeah, it's the absolute worst. And I mean, not only can you're not supposed to be able to advertise, but I feel like I have observed that you can advertise, but then the hijacker will get, or the reseller will get the sale, right? That's not supposed to be the case, but I feel like I have observed that many times.
Oh, Amazon's is a leaky faucet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if on occasion you could get ads to leak through and then have it leak through to them.
Yeah, because how can they really, it's imperfect, right? So anyway, being diligent about buy box issues is super important. Okay. Next question. When do you recommend starting to run sponsored brands or sponsored display? I guess this person is probably, they started with sponsored products, which is correct. That's the right place to start. Like, at what point would you pull the trigger on those other more top of funnel ad types?
I guess the first consideration would be budget, right?
Yeah.
Clearly. So if you've got a really, really tight ad budget, you're still in the launch phases, you're going to want to grow the business before you start to, to go down those roads. So that's number one. And budget's always a consideration, right? Even if it's not a consideration, like you're really tight with your ad dollars, it's still a consideration. But ideally, I mean, I know I kind of poo-poo sponsored display and sponsored brands. It can kind of feel like I'm not against those placements necessarily. It's just I find that they're inefficient. So I would say even within the first 30 days, you don't want to, you just got to win where you can win. Right. And so I look at a search page, not in terms of like rank necessarily, but I look at it in terms of like a Monopoly game, right? Kind of like the SERP. So how much real estate I can control on the page. And the ultimate goal is to control as much of that real estate as you can for the lowest possible cost, right? And so you're average across those placements. And so, you really should, because there are situations where I remember when sponsored video first came out where, you can get efficient, you can get efficiency out of those placements. And why wouldn't you make the extra money? But you really need to be careful there because those headline ads can beat you up. And that vanity of seeing yourself top of page can be really, really expensive and not really driving that much meaningful revenue to the business. So my TLDR on it would be run as many ad types as you can and watch efficiency and put your money where you win.
Yep. I think that's always good advice. And in terms of a split, I'm usually something like 75-80% sponsored products, or even more depending on the niche. There's definitely some niches where like you don't really need some of those more top of funnel ads so much. Like you can do so well with the sponsored products. But for me, I think like when to pull that trigger or when to start exploring it is when you have plenty of data and sponsored products and let that determine, what your strategy is with sponsored brands. So like take your top 10 terms for that ASIN or for that family of ASIN from what's working already in sponsored products and, put that into your sponsored brands because you know that it works for that product, right? You don't necessarily need to create totally new sponsored brands campaigns with random keywords. You have already done that research and you have that data. So let that help you determine your strategy for those other ad types because they are more expensive. And like if you're doing broad discovery with the sponsored brands, like that's gonna hurt your budget for sure.
That's a great call. I was gonna say yes. Discovery with sponsored brand and sponsored display is not going to be cost efficient.
Yeah.
Great point that you. Yeah, great call out. Yeah, great stuff.
For sure. All right. How are you using AMC now that it's available for everybody? I think, yeah, that's their question. How are you using AMC, or are you, and what does that look like?
I wish I had a better answer for this, but this is what I got. So I've been begging for this for a long time because I mean, I don't like DSP. I don't.
Yeah.
I think there's much better ways to spend people's money, even if I'm a bigger brand. And if I was a $50 million brand, I would still think about what. Like I know I'm going to get shoved for this from some people. That's just my feeling on it. But the thing that frustrated me was that AMC is a fantastic diagnostics tool and analytics tool, and you could only get it if you paid your eyeballs out in DSP advertising.
Yeah.
So now they open it up for the masses, and this is like a recent, kind of a recent thing. Full transparency internally, I'm working on other things. I'm trying to get like proprietary dashboards and stuff built out, but I haven't done a lot with it. But it's going to be, you're going to want somebody that knows data, right? You're going to really maximize it. Somebody that understands SQL to query the server, like, because it's not exactly user friendly, right? And so once I have that piece in place and I can query the server and start to break some of that data. That's why I'm so jealous of Rita Java. You know what she is for PPC Ninja.
Oh,
Like,
she's great. Yeah.
yeah, she like that's who she is anyway. Like, she's already like
Yeah.
a data scientist. Like, I wish I'm a marketer, right? So like,
Yeah.
I have to bring in people for that. But when I go neck deep into that, that's the way I'm going to go, because it's really tough to use that data and action that data until you have that asset in place that you can work back and forth with to get your own proprietary system built out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been playing around with it, and they do have more templates available now that are no code or low code, but I don't know if it's truly no code. I mean, you do still need to have somewhat of a
Mhm.
background, I think. But just having access to that data, I think, is going to be really powerful. I think the gap that I'm still trying to bridge is like, now I have all of this data. How am I going to make it actionable? Like, what decision is that changing in our process? So for example, now I know that like the majority of my customers purchase within 1 minute of seeing my ad. Okay, great. That's very interesting. But now what am I going to do? What does that change, in my advertising strategy, and what does that change in my decision making process? That's the part where I'm still trying to bridge. I think like having I find myself going, oh, neat, this is cool, this is interesting, great, but like, what does it change, and what action should I now be taking with this data? I think that's where I'm at.
Really read my mind.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely sharing that in that mindset, is that, man, it's about how you action the data. And so you can go down these rabbit holes and get all these really cool metrics, and then you can chase rainbows trying to build stuff
Mm,
around stuff that's not really meaningful and end up wasting money. And so I think, yeah, 100%. Yeah, does it really matter? Like, you want the data, right? And you want to look into
right.
that and find things that matter. And the only do that's the testing is to tap into it. But the cautionary tale there is always like, it's real easy to get caught, running down these winding roads of the weeds, and kind of losing sight of actions that are going to make, meaningful actions that are going to move the business forward. So 100% mirror your
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think where it can have an impact, right away, even if you're not sure like what if it doesn't change anything in your processes, is to help you tell that story to clients. Like if the client is kind of,
Mm.
like customer journey, that's a really big one. Like when do they make the purchase? Is it after they see your ad twice? Is it after they see your sponsored brands and then your sponsored products? Like what does the journey look like? I think that can be really good for like telling the story and advocating for why your strategy is a good strategy. It's kind of like from the reverse, right? So rather than changing your decisions, it's like justifying your strategy and decisions. I think that could be a good use case for it, potentially.
Repeat purchase segmentation too is another one
Oh
that
yeah.
jumped in. That's where I really want to dig in. You kind of inspired me as you talked about that a little bit. You can set up these audience segments, based on, and you can make your remarketing dollars work harder. The thing that I really like about it is that PAT and display and stuff like that's typically been our lever to retarget. And it's not the most efficient lever, right? You have to
Mm,
throw a lot of impressions out into the ether to generate the clicks to get people to buy. And the intriguing thing about the new audience segments is that you can set your sponsored products targets up and tune those in to those
yep.
audience segments. So I think that would be a huge unlock for repeat purchase brands to get a lot more out of your money and get more granular segmentation and get leverage and just make your money work hard. It's super exciting. I mean, it is a huge, huge, huge development. And I think anybody that's not thinking about it and actively working towards, incorporating that into their strategy, I mean, it's just a huge oversight. Like, you have
Yeah.
to do it, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and we've been playing around testing out the different audiences, like the pre-built audiences that
Mhm.
Amazon's now offering. Like you said, repeat purchases, add to cart has been like a really obvious one, which is kind of like this is such a fundamental, audience segment in D2C. Like we now finally have it on Amazon, It's like of course we want to target people who added to cart. Like that's a very strong signal they want to purchase. So that's been good for us. So yeah, that's a really good call out with the audience segmentation that's now available.
Great
So
stuff.
do you think this isn't a question from the audience, it's a question from me. Do you think that Amazon's going to roll out DSP for everybody? Like, do you think that that's why they're rolling out AMC for everybody, and then they're going to have DSP available to the masses, sort of? Or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've seen the buzz around this. We've both seen the buzz around this. My
Yeah.
answer is a hard yes, and this is why. The sponsored products drives most of the revenue. There's more sellers on the platform every day, and there's only so much ad inventory to sell. And even these sponsored brands placements, the sponsored display placements are becoming saturated. And so I always look at it as like Amazon's the house and the house always wins. And so they're just trying to monetize further. And so I would not be surprised if in the near future they roll DSP out in phases to all advertisers, because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't, I mean, it's got it for my, I think it might be, if it's not other than like the cloud segment of their business, it's the fastest growing business segment they have. So the more placements they have to peddle, the more money they have to make. But the cautionary tale there again, it becomes like you can go down all these winding roads and throw all this money at Amazon at the Amazon casino, and the lights are flashing and ding, 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 ding. And then 2 hours later, look at this person's converting here, and you're just putting money into the machine and your profits just keep shrinking. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I mean, it just makes sense. They're running out of inventory to sell.
Yeah, no, I think that's I agree with you. And like, yeah, why wouldn't they? You know, why wouldn't they try to sell you more stuff? So yeah, I feel like the AMC is kind of the soft launch, and then they're gonna go give everybody full DSP access. And then, you know, they're always like, they've got more of the TV stuff going on. Like they've got the partnership with Netflix and that kind of thing, which is exciting for a certain category of brand. So yeah, interesting times.
For sure. Yeah, it's been a big year.
Yeah, it definitely has. Okay. Next question is kind of inventory related. If you are running out of inventory, do you pause your advertising? Is what they're asking.
I've actually tested this both ways because there's two different schools of thought on this. And I think I have, it's a bad news scenario. So there's a lot of folklore in our space, right? And so one school of thought is you sell hard and fast and sell out, and Amazon remembers that. I haven't really noticed that to be the case. I mean, it's hard to see if it mattered. I've had situations where we tried to milk it out, and that didn't seem to make a difference, right? And so you really are in a pickle, right? And so if it does, I guess there are points of time where it does matter, right? So if, let's say I have a back in stock window of like 14 days in like the perfect scenario, right? Like those types of decisions become more important because maybe I can increase my burn rate because I'm going to stock in faster. If it's a more grim situation where you could be 30 days out of stock, a lot of times there's not much you can do. And so because remember, vacating those placements does impact the business. Like you just really have to try to slowly wind things down. And I found one thing I can say I have found over the years is that making hard lever shifts in one direction or another is usually ill-advised. So just shutting off all your ads, I wouldn't necessarily do that, but start to pull your ad spend back and wean things down. But the sad truth here is that it's anecdotal at best when you hear what works and what doesn't. And it really is a tough spot, and there really is not much you can do. But the one thing I can tell you is that I wouldn't completely shut my ads off, right? I would work my budget down. It's better to do things from an iterative standpoint and slowly than it is to just like pull plugs out of the wall and see what happens. But it really is a tough spot. And I've seen this multiple times over the years. And so you just kind of got to do the best you can with what you got. But I would say a slow sell down is better, and don't turn the ads off completely if you don't have to.
You're right. You're kind of dealing with damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like they're both bad. It's all bad decisions, and you just have to choose from which one is the least bad.
Right.
So our school of thought is to raise price first. Can
Mhm.
you raise your price first and try to slow sales down that way? Again, it's a bad spot because you're going to probably lose rank because you are slowing down your sales, but you're slowing them down intentionally, because we believe that Amazon really punishes out of stock more than a slowed sales velocity, just because they really care about that fast shipping promise to customers. So we'll raise price first if it looks like you're going to be running out of stock and your next boat is not on the horizon. And then actually we'll pull back on ads, and we will actually fully stop ads if you only have like 10 days of cover. And try,
Right.
the idea is like, try to at least, like, let's sell through the rest of your stock organically so that you can make more profit on that, even though you're going to lose profit no matter what, because you're going to be out of stock. And you're going to lose rank with all of those actions. You're going to lose rank no matter what. So the real answer is do good inventory forecasting. I think is the, but it's part of the deal. It's unavoidable. Like, everybody runs out of stock pretty much at some point, throughout the year. Unfortunately, like, it's really common, but that's what I would say.
In hindsight, so you bring a great point. I think the other thing that the other like caveat there that I thought about is like it depends on where the brand is, like from like life cycle standpoint, right? So
Mm,
if I'm to a point where I'm doing 60 or 70% of my sales organically, it can make sense to shop ads because I'm still going to get sell through. If you're a new startup and 75% or 80 or 90% of your conversions are paid and you're in that unfortunate situation, going from like 18 orders a day to 2 is a pretty steep jump where,
yeah.
although again, some people say it's okay just to burn the candle at both ends and just stock out and be done. But that just hasn't been my experience. You got to be smart. You got to meter it out the best you can. And Carly brings up a really good point too. Like sometimes you can't focus on external factors and just have to maximize profit, right? And keep your
Yeah,
fingers crossed. And then when you get back in stock, get back in the fight.
exactly. Yeah. But either way, it's a tough spot for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions that we've got time for today. So thank you so much for joining me. Really good stuff. Lots of really good insights. Yeah. Where can people find you, and any other final thoughts?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah, I would say that'd be a good place to follow my content. I just started a new video series called Breaking Amazon, which I'm pretty excited about.
Ooh,
We're
cool.
going to have like a number of different guests across disciplines, not just advertising, but marketing and operations and actual sellers on the show. Kind
Oh,
of like
cool.
the tagline is breaking rules and beating titans because I'm kind of that underdog mentality, right? And so disrupting markets. So that's the theme of the show. That's going to be super fun. So be on the
Awesome.
lookout for that. And then my agency is Rainmkr, and we specialize in health and wellness brands because what I didn't get into in my intro prior to that is that my degree is in health services administration. I worked in therapy for 6 or 7 years in physical therapy. So before that, GNC. So health and wellness and exercise is just kind of a part of who I am. So we really focus on those brands. So that's where you can find.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, John, for joining. And thank you, everybody for joining in the audience. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.